Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our really first quantity surveyors subcommittee meeting. We did have earlier a CPD particular event, when we dealt with the procurement regulations. Ricardo, this one is also for CPD for quantity surveyors.
Well, yeah, the meetings, you get CPD hours for them, so yes.
Right. So you will all have CPD for this one too as well. This subcommittee meeting has come about to look at fluctuations in the construction industry, particularly how we're going to deal with them in construction contracts. This has come about because I got on the 4th of February a telephone call from the president of the Contractors Association, who was had this dilemma as to how contractors are going to deal with this issue with the rising price of steel. He was talking about rising price of cement and the increase in freight. That has left a number of contractors in a quandary for those who have fixed price contracts. And he was asking me what can be done. And I mentioned to him that, well, in the late 70s, early 80s, that construction contracts then had what was called a fluctuation clause in it. And he didn't know much about it. Did do a newspaper article, Newsday, I think on Sunday, the 7th of February, talking about that that the industry needs to consider fluctuations in construction contracts. So I decided to have a chat with Mike Sams. Mike Sams had back in 2007 had a guest from Jamaica, Brian Goldston. Is that the right name, Mike?
Right.
Brian Goldston. I've sent those minutes of that meeting ahead of this one, so some of you can see what was discussed back then, and now that we are at that junction again, probably even more so, because if anybody looked at history, they would see that what has happened between the period 1975 and 1983, that we're probably, again, if you look at the way the curve is going in terms of construction prices, we look like we're heading in that direction, a meteoric rise. So I've decided that we the quantity surveyors, being the construction cost consultants, construction cost advisors, the experts, ought to start addressing this issue of fluctuations in construction before anybody else, because this falls squarely within the realm of the quantity surveying and his role in the construction industry. So I've done a kind of brief presentation, and then in discussions with Mike earlier in the week, a number of questions he said that we can probably look at and address, and some of you may have other questions. So what I'm going to do is just go through the short presentation and get to that point, and then we could start looking overall as to how we address this issue of fluctuations in construction contracts, because a lot of the newer surveyors may not have experienced it, working on or doing a fluctuating contract. Some of the older ones, like ourselves, in the industry for 40 years, would have had that experience and do have an idea as to how the mechanism operates. So basically, what is fluctuation? Well, the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the 11th edition, 2003, defines fluctuation as an irregular shifting back and forth or up and down in the level, strength, or value of something. So fluctuations are usually applied on large projects lasting several years, where price escalations can be very significant. On smaller projects, contractors are expected to take inflation into account when calculating a firm price. In times of price uncertainty, fluctuations can be applied to all construction contracts, particularly large and medium projects. So fluctuation in the rate of inflation causes serious problems in the economic processes of the construction industry. The difficulty being to calculate the true rate of return for work undertaken on a project. An adverse fluctuation, if not addressed in contracts, can be detrimental to this industry and the economy as a whole. And to touch on this point, if we don't address fluctuations, in construction contracts, and we do get meteoric rises in prices because of the great uncertainty that COVID-19 has brought about in many countries, where taxations, custom duties, as we've seen now with freight price increases and so forth, we're going to be faced with a problem where if contractors are on firm or fixed price contracts and these things happen to them, many of them may go bankrupt. And that could cause great problems for the industry in terms of the industry being the economic barometer of the country. The industry would be in disarray, and that might cause a lot of problems for people who have to be employed, and also for the employers and the projects, and we could probably see a lot of people in front of the courts. So we need to probably start thinking of this issue of fluctuations. So how can we provide fluctuation in construction contracts? Well, this is done by the inclusion of fluctuation clauses in the construction contracts to allow the contract sum to be adjusted to take account of irregular changes to the price of labor, materials, plant, and other costs throughout the construction project. And I want to emphasize the word irregular, because it gives an idea of something unexpected, So fluctuations can be for if the full gamut in terms of everything under the sun, or limited. So a full fluctuation clause will allow contractors to claim for changes in the price of labor, transport, materials, plant, taxes, custom duties, and overheads, etc. Whereas a limited fluctuation clause may limit it only to, say, the price of materials, or maybe the cost of labor, or any other component that is mentioned before of an expected irregular price escalation.
Hello, Derek, Mike, good
Hi.
afternoon. Sorry to be late.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Bye-bye.
So how do we calculate the amount of fluctuations? Well, the amount of fluctuations may be calculated from nationally published price indices. So for example, the retail price index or the construction price index, or public records, rather than calculating actual cost increases, which could be very time consuming. Actual cost increases would be applied to actual paid bills and receipts that are specifically for the client's projects. Contractors may have to adjust their accounting procedures to be project specific, or they will risk not being reimbursed for project purchases. What do we mean by that? Like for example, a contractor just can't buy blocks in bulk, and then say, well, I've used X amount on this project and it cost more than the basic price, and I intend to claim for it. He will actually have to show specifically purchases of blocks on that invoice or bill for that project. And I remember in the early days as a technician working with Hart and Leonard, we were sent into the accounting offices of contractors to actually pull out the bills for price increases that they indicated that were subject to fluctuations, in order to prepare the account or for their claim on fluctuations. So contractors are going to have to, once they enter into a contract with fluctuations, they're going to have to practice open book accounting, because they're going to have to declare their accounts open in order for us to evaluate those actual cost increases. Now, the payment calculations are then based on a project program for activities and a payment chart against that program, resulting in cash flow projections. So quarterly percentage assessments of inflations are then added to projected figure, allowing for the price fluctuations. Fluctuations are calculated from a base rate. That is, the contractor may be asked to tender based on current prices, for which he will be required to fill out a basic schedule of price in his tender, And it is from those tender prices that we calculate, and the contract would make provisions for the contractor to be reimbursed for price changes. So those specified items only the items that he has identified on his basic price list would be the only items in which he would be allowed to make a claim for fluctuations over the duration of the project. And that's going to be called the fluctuating price. Now, we might ask, this only provides for the contractor. How do we ensure some fairness to the employer? So to be fair to the client, the base rate for fluctuation can be established to be applied only if prices over the duration of the construction period fluctuates above or below, say, 10% of the basic schedule of prices that he's put in his tender. Or alternatively, fluctuations can be calculated if prices exceed those of the highest tender price received. In the UK, this has been practiced, and they say that this would deter contractors from underbidding. In other words, if you bid so low and you got the contract, and your fluctuating price from your basic price rate does not, the sum, the adjusted contract sum, does not go over the highest tender price, you don't get any fluctuation claim. So you will have to probably prepare a fair bid, so that if fluctuation does occur, you stand a chance of getting your claim for the fluctuating price. Another mechanism is based upon the average tender price. So you could say, well, look, if we get too high a price or whatever it is, the average tender price could be considered instead of highest tender price. And formulae can be developed and applied to various methods for calculating fluctuations. So now that we have this basic understanding of fluctuations, in discussion with Mike, these questions arose, and after this, I will allow for us to have a chit chat. What feedback are we getting from contractors regarding the recent irregular price increases of, say, steel, cement, and freight? In fact, I would like to open the floor right here, unless, Mike, you have anything that you would want to add?
If you could need to get the feedback from the members, because not many people have a lot of work. Anybody who has any actual claims from a contractor. If they could,
For the recent price increases.
yeah, in the last month, and also if any if the clients have been receptive to giving increases, and what is happening, whether the clients are holding out or they're holding them to the fixed price, any novel solutions that have come up so far.
That sounds good. Nobody seems to have received that claim.
Derek, sorry, I was muted, but I wanted to make a comment.
Oh, sure.
On one project that we have, when the prices started to show increases, what the client did is they made a payment to the contractor to allow him to buy all the steel that he will require for the job.
All right. Yes, I know of such an issue too as well.
Yeah, so they are protected against. So we didn't reach the point where we have to debate entitlement as such. The client was willing to pay for the materials because it's going into his building. He gets the benefit ultimately, and that was resolved like that.
Right. That's one way of dealing with it, where the contractor is on a firm price contract, and these things have happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But if you recall, at the HDC, there was a period when the prices were escalating quite rapidly. And what we did, we operated a limited fluctuating price contract, where we list the items that the contractor would benefit from fluctuations. Well, let me say the project will benefit from fluctuations, because really the contractor is not really benefiting. And we shared the risk. We told the contractor that he is to take the first 10% increase, and thereafter he will be reimbursed at cost. And we had developed a modification to the conditions of contract to reflect that modus operandi.
Very good.
You were there. I knew you were there. Yeah. In those days, we were looking for small money.
In those days, small money was still big money.
Yeah.
Are we likely to see price increases in other commodities? Bearing in mind that almost a large percentage of raw materials that goes into our construction product comes from abroad, and a number of countries will be instituting taxation regimes and customs duties and so forth, which could ultimately impact on prices, of the cost of purchasing, of bringing in those raw materials for manufacturers to produce goods for the industry. Because COVID-19 has led to this great uncertainty, and we're likely to see not just steel, but other products.
Yeah, but Derek?
Yes.
It's all well and good looking at, in certain fluctuations clauses in new contracts.
Yes.
But in an existing contract, what would drive an employer to pay the contractor for fluctuations that may have occurred?
Mm.
Well, the contractor is really at the mercy of the employer in this instance. He might be asking for...
He is not at the mercy of the employer, because if the employer pays, it means that cost is just transferred to the employer. So
but that's what I'm talking about. He's at the mercy of the employer. It's that if the employer pays, if the employer doesn't pay.
Dennis, but there would be benefits in it, you know, in that you don't know if it is substantial fluctuations that could send the contractor under. All right, so the contractor goes under, the employer still doesn't have his building, you know, and the
Right.
employer will have to continue procuring it in the inflated market that the said contractor was facing. So, you know, it might be in the employer's interest to meet the contractor and offset his cost, given that ultimately he benefits. It's his building, and it is not something really that the contractor could have envisaged when he priced. I mean, I don't
Neither the employer,
I
neither
know, but
employer
you're looking
try to pass those costs on to the contractor and says, well, the employer will benefit.
yeah, well, you could be. I'm not speaking contractually here, because contractually you could hold out and tell the contractor, look at there, you have to build it regardless of the price increases.
Yeah.
But you look to see what is fair. You know, would the contractor finish? Is he able to finish at the inflated prices? And if he is not able to finish, all right, yeah, you could go to court and so on and resolve whatever you eventually 10 years down the road. But if it would be more meaningful to meet with the contractor and pay the extra cost, or a portion of the extra cost he has to incur, it might be the best move to go. To take.
And whilst it might be the best move, Willie, some employers just don't have the money. They have reached their limit of finance in terms of the project as awarded, and the financial institution says to them, well, you can't get any more money on this project.
Yeah, well, all those are the factors that you have to take into consideration. The project may just fail.
You know, and that happened in the late 70s, early 80s. A lot of contractors went bankrupt. A lot of projects were standing up there unfinished.
That's not what we want, you know, as an industry, that's not what we want. So you look to see what would be the more meaningful way. And in my mind, you know, the employer, even though he does not have a contractual obligation, you know, the employer can look to see to meet some of these additional costs.
Yeah, and that is why we ask, what is the position of the clients in respect of this? Because I recall back in those times, right? The government said to contractors, send in your claims. We will look at them and see, you know, in terms of an ex gratia position. Yeah. And they kept them talking and talking. And then I remember that Minister of Finance, them, a fella called Bassotti, you know, right? He said, well, listen, the government have no money. We can't pay, you know. The only thing we could do is give you 50%. That's the best we could do. And he had basically ordered that nobody can get no more than 50% of what they claim.
So they called,
you know, and a lot of people, a lot of construction companies went to the wall. You know.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, we have.
So how long a man could hold out that, if you understand? So, like a private sector client, a big conglomerate could tell you, well, yeah, let me talk, and keep you talking until you go bankrupt, because your finances ain't gonna wait that long. So you know, we have an obligation as the body in charge of the construction costs to look at these things and to formulate a position, you know, and see how best we can put this, you know, as an industry position, you know, to consider these things, because it could have detrimental effects, you know, on a lot of firms if in this great uncertainty that is to come, we start to see these price increases. We can't just wait until it comes to start talking it. You know, we have to start talking it now and putting mechanism in place and try to, you know, to see any contract that is going to be over a year should have a fluctuation clause.
Every payment made now is ex gratia on the existing contracts. Every single
That's
one.
right.
So it's a matter of what accommodation you can get. Now, if you do like what Dennis says and don't pay anything, if the contractor goes under, the new contractor is going to be charged in the new price.
That's my point.
Which means he has to pay the new price.
Yes, and that is what the common sense position that we could put to our employers, but we have to understand: does the employer have the money?
And is the new price with a markup too?
No,
You know,
no, you get what you mean with the new contractor.
Yeah, but in addition to that, you know, I'm just saying that, you know, we need to look at the employer's interests as well. But, you know, if the contractor goes bankrupt or can't complete his obligations under the contract, and the employer has to go to a new contractor, doesn't the conditions provide that any excess costs will be borne by the first contractor?
Yeah, of course, if he's still
But if he
existing.
goes bankrupt, he is taking a risk. Yeah, he's going out of business. You can come and get the car.
Right. But I'm saying that there's still a cause of action.
So
So we can't say that, you know, we can't make these blanket statements and say that it's still within the client's interest, you know, to pay the money, because if he doesn't and the contractor go bankrupt, what will happen?
I see we have Deraj Ramsingh has his hand raised. Deraj, you want to come in here and have your say?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. You're hearing, right?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Right. Okay. Well, the thing is, I mean, with the fluctuations, right? The truth is, normal fluctuation in price, or if I say any increase in price over time, you know, typical, you know, couple percent a year. The truth is that whatever the increase is, that value is value to the client. Now, many mightn't agree, but the truth is that that cost, because the value is the client's value, because it's his project, then he should pay that cost. The thing now, with some of the increases we're seeing, is really, well, my question is, how long? Is it like, if it's like an outlier, Mike Sams reminded me the other day that, well, steel went sometime in the 90s or something, it went to 10,000 a ton. I mean, I can't remember that, but, and then it went back down. So is this a short-term thing? And I think that's where it gets kind of fuzzy. The truth is, if it's short-term, no, is neither the contractor nor the client has any part in this. It's nobody's fault. It's just is the reality. But if it's short-term, then if steel costs 70% more on a project, the value of that building or that project, it won't be at that price in the future, because you won't be able. I mean, it's just like stocking steel. So in my business, we stock steel coils. We don't want to buy now, because steel price is high. When you're ready to offload it a year from now or 6 months from now, prices may go down and you might be at a disadvantage. And I think that is really the elephant. In this abnormal, or again, some may say, well, the price may remain up, but if it is in a year's time, it goes back down. What is the situation?
Well, that is the point there, Raj. That's why it's called a fluctuation clause, because fluctuation, and it's not escalation or inflation clause. It's a fluctuation clause that if prices go up, you know, or down, the adjustment is done to the contract, the final contract price.
Yeah, understand. And in this case, you see, it is based on the pockets of the stakeholders. But I guess fairness would be that, you know, is this both parties' risk. the contractor and the client.
So
You know, well, going back to your example about the minister that says, well, they'll only pay 50%. I mean, that might be, you know, the case.
yeah, and they paid you in 10-year bonds.
Ooh, well, worse yet.
Not worse yet. You know, paid you in bonds. I remember that. Got payment in bonds.
Yeah, but you know, as Mr. Joseph alluded to, you know, if you're well, for example, if the client doesn't have the money, you're right. So the bank says, well, no more money, and the contractor, I mean,
it's a real possibility that the government will not have money. Eh?
Right. Well, true. And the contractor is his only job. The majority is steel, foundation, and superstructure, and he doesn't have the money. So, well, the project stalls. You know, you know, it might be half and half, and then it might be project specific. According to some will go, some mightn't be able to go. But this is really an impact on the industry.
And you see, when the contract is stalled, the client is going to be paying interest to the financier until we start. So it's going to be a cost.
And communication costs.
Which is what is happening like at Westmore now. And a real pressure. People are not paying. And they have to go back to the finance and renegotiate the loan that they have.
So who pays for that at the end of the day?
The question is, who benefits from the project at the end of the day?
Man who buy the shirt and the food in Westmore.
The client, if he have a contract to pay interest, is him to pay.
You know.
But you see, there are cases now, people are about to start a building and just steel building. Now, prices have gone up by 60, 70, 80%. Now, they're not going to be able to start. They have to try and come to some agreement with the client if he's going to pay the extra money. Because if he doesn't pay, he is not able to buy the material. And the entire frame of the building will not go up. They either pay and it goes up, or the project has to be stopped.
And that's the reality.
So
if the client has no money.
So isn't that contracts go through the window?
Which contract? If he has no money to buy the thing, which contract? If you don't have money to buy bread and you're starving, what you gonna do?
So because you don't have the money, it means that you don't have any contractual obligations?
Which contract? I am going bankrupt. You can come and get 1 cent on the dollar from me. That's what the law says. Come and get it.
But you might be able to call in his bonds, Mike. The might call in the contractor's bond.
10%?
If you have a bond.
Well, most contracts do.
No.
I could see where you have a new contract, you know, and it's important to consider these things and to make it a point in the contract, you know, that you have the fluctuations. But the issue is where you have existing contracts, right? And the contractor is making a claim which could only be a ex gratia claim for increases. And I mean, of course, the employer should be willing to look at it and to determine to what extent he could meet some of those costs. But he shouldn't be obliged, you know, to pay those things. Like the minister who says we could only pay 50%. I mean, it's understandable. You reach halfway, you know, you go to an extent to meet the contractor to try to ameliorate the situation. But don't come to me that you're obligated to do it because it's your building.
No, Dennis, I don't think that, at least myself, and I didn't get that impression from any of the other contributors, that there's an obligation to do it. One is looking to see what is the best way forward.
Common sense position.
Oh gosh, don't say it, sir.
Get it finished.
Yeah, and that's how I see it. You know, what is the best way forward, you know, to salvage the project? It doesn't mean to say that you open up a pipe for the contractor to just come fill his bucket, you know. It will be controlled. And it would be only on those materials that it was so far-fetched to have foreseen at the time of tendering that these things would have happened. You know, so as the
Yes.
market now stands, it's only on steel. Well, lumber has started to show its head too.
Yes.
It's only steel. And my own view is that the price of steel will only be like this until the COVID issue settles down with the vaccine, you know. Because whereas in the 2000s and in the 1990s, the increases were as a result of increase in demand, the issue now is a decrease in supply. It is
Yes.
the supply end of the market that is causing the price to go up.
But
Not
you also have the situation with freight.
oh,
That you can't discount at all the increased freight prices that
yeah, but all of those.
And that's not all. Canada is considering to increase taxation on businesses in order to pay for having to pay people to stay home during COVID. So when a country is manufacturing and they impose those things, there's going to be a price increase on the raw material that is coming to our manufacturers to use for manufacture. And so on, and there will be an increase in the price of the product locally. Or if the product is being made in that country, it will have an increase there. And if you have an increase in freight, you have another increase. You know, and so we are going into a situation worldwide of economic uncertainty. You know, and different countries are going to be addressing how they have to recover the money that they have had to pay out in social services, you know, right, to get back into the government coffers. And they're going to look at various mechanisms, and that's going to have an impact on us because a significant amount of our raw materials come from abroad for our construction products. So we cannot say it's going to only be steel or the freight or lumber rising its head. It's going to be probably many other things. And then how will contractors have to deal with that? That is the fear that the contractors are having now. And they have reached out to us as quantity surveyors to say, how can we address this? How can you all assist? You know. And that is where we are now, because we can't wait another year or 2 years to start talking about putting the fluctuation clause in contracts to come, sorry. You know, or else we're gonna have the same position what some people already facing one fixed price contract if we allow more fixed price contracts to get awarded. It's gonna have a serious impact on the economy. And because this industry is going to get affected, that is the economic barometer of a country. We will have to prepare a position, and we probably will have to. I don't know how employer organizations are going to take it, or maybe we might have to ask for a meeting with the Minister of Finance. You know, to deal with the issues, or do we take it to the JCC and then the JCC takes it? You know, I don't know how we could. I mean, we could have the answers, but how to get it implemented is another thing.
No, I'm trying to understand this. Are you talking about new contracts, Derek? And
Yes, the existing contracts are already there. The issues we've already vetted as to what that position is. My thing is, how do we deal with the future contracts to come and the risks? You know.
Yeah, well, I think we'll have a consensus that, you know, the fluctuations clause be included. We could have, you know, as you quite rightly said, utilize like the JCC and whatnot to bring pressure on probably some of the government agencies to make sure that that is instituted.
Yeah, and that brings us to the next question. If we're going to look at a fluctuation clause, and I've sent sample fluctuation clause for, you know, and one of the schedules from what came from the standard building contract GC205, which is the basis of our TTIA 2013 contract. You know, the question is, and Mike asked the question, are we able to come up with a basic price list? You know, Deiraj has his hand raised again.
Yeah, well, clearly from listening to that little part there, it needs, you know, stakeholder consultation from both sides, the contractors, clients, to see what's their perspective.
And I've been informed that other items that are increasing as well. Electrical cable, from as far as I understand, has increased by 75% as well.
Once you have steel increase, electrical products go up as well, because they're based on a lot of alloys, you know. But the question is, how do we come up with a standard basic price list?
Derek, if I may, I
Yes.
have a tender that's opening this afternoon, actually. And
Right.
what we did is we wrote in very much the limited fluctuation clause. We
Very
told
good.
contractors that they are to declare the prices prevailing 5 days before today. And we limited the listing. We went with the structural steel, we went with the rebar and the metal decking. And we told them that, look, at the time of purchase, they are to provide the quotation from the very source that they got the quotation at the time of tender, so we can calculate the increased cost and they will be reimbursed that cost.
That's great. You know, we might be able to share that standard clause with our members, really.
Yeah, yeah.
If it's not breaching any kind of confidentiality.
It's a copyright fee, you know, as we go along, as many times as tough times, you know.
But it's critical with the basic price list that the supplier has got to be the same person. You cannot
Yes.
switch.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to control.
Critical.
Yeah.
Critical.
Yeah, we wanted to control that. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting too as well.
We got our clients' approval or consent to write that into the contract.
Great, that's good. And I feel that's the way forward.
Yeah, because you know
Yeah.
this you know the CYA clause.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're going to operate the CYA clause and the contractors in this uncertain world, they're going to apply the CYA clause and the employer will pay for the increases, whether the increases happen or not. And if it happens, whether it happens as bad as the guy would have covered himself for.
Right.
That is the fundamental things, you know. This is no new science.
No, it's not new science. We've done this before, but it's the thing is that for a number of years we've had stable prices, and you know, and therefore there was no need for it. But
Yeah.
now we're coming into a period of great uncertainty, and we don't know when it's going to end or whatever it is. And we have to start looking at the fairness to both the contractor and the employer.
I know of a small contract, a residential building, where the client wrote into the contract that he's going to do an advance payment. He will recover it in 3 equal installments, commencing with the 3rd payment. What the client did is that they realized, hey, look, I forget to deduct a recovery of the advance in the previous payments and the one before that. And they deduct the entire advance payment from a certificate before him.
Wow.
Of course, the contractor now is starved for cash flow. And the arguments keep going back and forth, you know, well, how could I get the funding to buy the steel? And that was buying the steel at the old price. Now the steel reached the new price. So the contractor just withdraw. He said, look, you finish your building. Well, the words that the contractor uses, I have built 6 houses in my lifetime for my family and myself. And I never went to the bank. I never went to the bank for financing. Why should I go to the bank to fund your project, you know? And it remained right there.
Is there a contract involved, Willie?
Yeah, but the employer is the one who broke the contract.
All right.
Yeah, they're supposed to deduct the advance payment, chirrup, if I use the word. And you come and you do it in one whack and you tell the contractor, all right, finish the building now. Go in the bank and get money to finish it.
Wow.
I don't know if the QS on that job is part of the gathering here today.
We're not exposing anybody here today.
No, but the names, I'm not seeing his name there.
You know, another thing is that, so we have to look at this basic price listing. So we might have to start putting our heads together and see how we could create a standard basic price list. You know, labor might remain stable, you know, materials might, don't forget that after March, we're going to be faced with fluctuating fuel prices as well. And don't forget, transport is a component, you know, in for the delivery of materials and so forth. You know, so we're gonna see increases, you know, and we're gonna have to start considering, looking at how we're going to deal with this.
Yeah, but if you're saying that with your basic price list, you know, and in order to claim for fluctuations, you must purchase from the same supplier.
Correct.
Yes.
Then how is it possible to do an overall basic price list that you know would be expected to be followed by most people, by most contracts? It's just not possible, right?
No, we are not doing the basic price list, you know, the contractor must do it.
The contractor has to put this prices on against the basic.
This is also a guide, so when you see it, you know, if it's reasonable or not.
Oh, I thought you would select the prices that you are allowing fluctuations, and the contractor would declare those prices, the unit price.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you give him a standard list, and then he price which ones he predicts, you know, during the currency of the contract is likely to increase.
Prices that his tender is based upon.
Right. Okay.
Right. So we might have to come up with a standard list unless somebody has one that we can start using as a format. You know, certainly, we used to have one back in the 70s. You know, I don't know how applicable that is today.
No, that list is only a guide. It's not a firm list. It's a guide for the industry or the QSs. It can't be firm.
And what if you gave a standard list and the contractor want to write in another one?
No,
Will he be allowed to do that?
No,
it's because each Barbara saying Scott and all of them different prices. So it is when the different price listed. But I think what you're trying to do really is just to get a guide for us as to what the prices are at the moment. But you can't enforce that. The contractor has to put in the price that he wants.
Yeah, he has to put in his price and name his supplier.
Yeah. He will get a quotation or a bill from that supplier to prove it.
Yes.
And you see, this is only for new contracts.
Yes.
And you see, there is no too much of a problem with the fluctuations in the future for the simple reason, if it's a new contract, every price that has gone up now is a basic price. There's no increase on that. It's only if steel goes up again.
Unless it goes up again, yes.
The ex-Gracia ones that have the problem. And you see, the thing is now, let's go further. How are we going to do our estimates? What increase are you going to put on to the existing? Because
to be a trust.
And if you look at the FIDIC contract, they look at a price index. You know, we do have a construction price index.
Yeah, but you also have the direct fluctuations. You know how we should call it? Do you remember in England they had this thing called the Nedo formula or the Nido formula?
Yes, the Nedo formula. Yes.
Prior to that coming out, the fluctuation was allowed on the basis of, let me see the bills and compare it to the base list.
That's right.
Then you have to ensure that the quantities are right also, you know. So I'm only giving you a bit.
So this is something like what the FIDIC clause is.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Right. So after considering the interests of the contractor and the client, what about our own interests? Is there to be some change in in our cost for having to go through this sort of procedure for?
But it's in our fee scales, Dennis.
Right, yes.
It's mentioned in the fee scale where you have a fluctuating price contract, what fees are based on.
Yeah, you have to work out fluctuation. But in today with all the software thing you have, I mean, even Excel, the calculating the fluctuations is not going to be as it used to be before, eh?
Yes. So right. We have the technology now. You know.
So is it that we have been overcharging people then if it's in the fee scale and you haven't had to do it on your contract?
No, Dennis, if you didn't have a fluctuations contract, you didn't have to apply that element of the fee scale.
If you have been doing that, my friend Dennis,
Where you have a total percentage fee that you would have quoted, and you now have to do the fluctuations. Are you saying that would have been included previously?
No. The fee scale have that as an add-on, an additional, percentage if you're doing a fluctuations contract. Don't have my fee scale on hand at the moment. If you pull up one, you should see it in the fee schedule.
Now they talk about prime cost contracts.
Yeah, but they have some fluctuations too as well. They have the fee scale there?
I have one, but I ain't seen it there.
But there was an element for it. You check post contract.
Yeah.
Or under time related.
Yeah, well, if it's under time related, it's under time related. We talk about
Might be there.
Yes, under post contract, it does says adjusting fluctuations in the cost of labor and materials if required by the contract up to the final account.
Right, so it's there.
Yeah.
No, they have it as standard services, Dennis. Is that right? Standard services shall include.
Yes.
Including pricing and agreeing to and adjusting fluctuations in the cost of labor if required by the contract, and attendance on monthly service.
But that's the point that I'm making. When you normally quoting your fee based on the scale, is it that you you go and reduce it because you don't have fluctuations to do?
Well, but I never was
Just go through this.
fortunate to get the fee scales paid by.
I don't think we was putting it in, you know. Fluctuations.
Fear of nobody. But it's, the fee scale covers fluctuations already. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hey, gentlemen, I'm very sorry, but I have to leave. I have to go and
Thanks, Willie. Thanks for your contribution. And if you can let us have anything that can assist us, you know, and don't be too surprised if we look for you to sit down and assist on this.
All right, thank you, my brother. Take care, guys.
Take care. Thanks. Now, fluctuations, putting a fluctuation clause in a contract too, might not be the only way. Mike has mentioned where they've used alternative tender systems in Jamaica. You want to explain that one to us, Mike?
No, it's in Trinidad.
It's in Trinidad, right?
In the early days, 40 years
Yes.
ago, 35, when the industry was heated up, they used to have a fluctuating price tender. And then there was another page which you could give an alternate price for a fixed price tender.
So you put two forms of tender in the tender document.
A tender A and a tender B. One was fluctuating and one was fixed. But what came out,
Right.
the fixed price was about 3-4% higher than the fluctuating. So nobody entered into a fluctuating price. They just take the 4%. It was cheaper. Because it looks as though the fluctuating price was overpriced.
So the contractors took the risk.
Well, no, it was inflated. Remember, money was flowing in.
Right. So they say, let's take something. Now, if you look at the minutes that I had sent in advance, you would see that Nolly Skinner actually told us back in 2005 what he had found through his experience in terms of tenders being scheduled for the same job on fixed price and on fluctuating contracts.
Right.
He said that there was an average delta of 7%. You know, so,
which
right?
Which is even less than the 10% that we are proposing that they absorb.
Well, that's what he was seeing then.
Yeah.
You know, when you had on the same job, I suppose it was the same, put in the tender A and tender B.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it had to come from that. Yeah.
And he was seeing that 7%. Nolly reported that. You know, so I put that in for you all to look at. That was the guide then that he had discovered. So we have issues that we have to deal with, you know, and we will have to set up probably a small committee to look into this aspect of fluctuations and to decide how we're going to approach, what approach we're going to take in order to have clients, well, at least the major client is the government. You know, I suppose some of their tender committees probably looking at this issue right now, you know, and I don't know how that's panning out, but how do we address it as an industry issue? Because it's going to come. No bones about that. You see nobody putting up their hand.
Well, the Minister of Finance will probably say no to everything. You see, he has just finished his building. He has no fluctuations.
Well, listen, we have to appeal to common sense.
Yeah.
You know, does he intend to see an economic collapse? Nigel has put his hands up. Yes, Nigel.
You hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Right. What I was thinking about is going back to in the early part of the discussion, and I know this was basically in relation to existing contracts where clients don't have enough money or clients' money run out.
Right.
Thinking about going forward, one of the ways to deal with this how the clients may accept the fluctuation cost is if in the early stages, when the project is being planned, when they're determining what the client budget is or should be, that is where you need to have a QS on board, advising them on the likelihood of fluctuation and catering for it in his early planning when he putting his budget together, which might be one of the ways to adjust it for new projects I'm talking about. So that way, the client don't overreach on a project where if fluctuation arise, he's not in a position to treat with it.
Yes, and that is why Nolly Skinner was doing his due diligence in trying to see what the price, the price if he was budgeted, what he could allow for extra in order to accommodate fluctuations. And that's why he was doing his information, and he got this average delta of 7%. So he knew then what he could put in his budget price, But do we know what that is today?
Or would it help as well, Derek, if we're able to get the client to make a larger mobilization or upfront payment so that the contractor could try to source most of his important materials upfront?
The question is, has contractors historically been doing that with the advance payment they've gotten?
What they did in Jamaica, they might give even 25% mobilization, but it was tied to buying materials. And the money you had to buy the materials within 2 to 3 months, and it had to be delivered. And when it's delivered, it becomes materials on site, so that it will pay back. But no money was given to them just like that. They might even make the checks payable to who you say you're buying it from.
Yeah.
It was never given to the contractors. They want to make sure that the money was going to what it's supposed to do. They had to come up with quotes to say what
that's another innovation. That's another innovation we could look at. So we could have different alternatives, in terms of what we could put forward to employers to consider. Greater mobilization.
What is happening now is that the price increases you get are not genuine. It's just price gouging. Because when steel went up the first week in January, it was the exact same steel that was there December the 31st. Nothing had been imported. And what the suppliers did, they just gouge and increase the price.
And that is exactly what happened in the late 70s and early 80s too as well.
I have a case
hoarding and price gouging,
I have a case now with the elevator. The elevator guy wants to increase the price by 30%.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Contractors can't absorb that.
This was a quotation November, December last year.
You see? So this is a real issue, and the contractors are concerned about it. And they've looked to us to ask us, well, how can you help us?
But if the members, any price increase they come across, if they could forward it to you. so that we can get an idea of what is going up.
Yes,
Because
so we could have the
not
basic
all of
price
us
list.
work in different types of things. So you could get a basis of what materials have gone up. And if you have an indication of how much, 20%, 50%, so that within the next 4 or 5 weeks, you could come up with something to say what materials have moved. Because
So we could look at this over 4 or 5 weeks and come back here for another meeting on it then.
to see how it has developed.
To actually put together our implementation mechanism. Yes?
Yeah. Because it's too new. It just started. I used to like this about electrical. Electrical cable went up 70%. Now I have a job where electrician has come and asked for an increase because it's a lot of things. Anything to do with metal. Because expect windows to go.
Yeah, steel is there. Windows are made up of alloys too as well.
Yeah. Anything to do with metal is going to go.
You know, and if lumber goes up, well then that's the cost of form work and false work and so forth.
But one thing has increased the price of timber. They have gone up.
Timber.
Yeah.
So the issue is here, you know, and we have to deal with it. So I like your suggestion, Mike. We look at it, come up with some implementation mechanisms over the next 4 or 5 weeks, develop on some of these things that we have, and you know, Dennis, if you could look at that greater advance payment one. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in conjunction with what Mike is saying, target certain materials. Put it towards certain materials that the contractor has to purchase.
Has to purchase.
Right. Right. Yeah. So if we could look at that, formulate something, you know, that we, the Institute of Surveyors, could put forward as alternatives to look. And Mike, you could look at the alternative tender system, the 2 tender aspect. Yes.
I'll try to find it.
And I'll call Willie and see if Willie could assist us with his standard clause that he's just done, you know, on fluctuations. And if we could all now, you know, look at this basic price list, give us an idea of what we should be putting in the basic price list, and we could come back here in 4 to 5 weeks. Would be good. For 4 weeks.
It should be escalating by then.
well, we'll just add to the list, Mike.
You know, I'm just saying, we're at the very beginning now. We're going to have a few, but everybody's going to use the transportation to increase everything.
And yes, transportation is going to cause overall increases too as well, you know. So let's say we come back here on the 17th of March, again 3 o'clock, yes, to flesh out the implementation aspect of this fluctuations aspects. All in agreement with that? We have 23 people here.
Yeah,
you know.
sure.
For those who have,
Yeah, I agree.
But you know, another thing we haven't mentioned is design and build. How are you dealing with that?
Well, not just design build, but the variance of design build, which means design build finance, you know, PPP, and so forth. The impact of those, would we put fluctuation clauses in those, or the same mechanism?
When the person tries to think about it.
You know, in the RFPs, you put particular conditions, don't you?
Yeah.
So we could.
But you realize 80% of the contracts don't affect us. It's done by the Chinese.
Well,
they're the ones who feel the pressure, and they're going to be bailed out.
We could only do what will affect us, eh?
Yeah.
You know. Right? if you looked at what happened to the foreign contractors back in the 70s, they all that, you know, Wimpy International, Higgs and Hill, Sodeteg, all of them fell to these fluctuation clauses as soon as they got their money from the government, because they got thunder to get it. As soon as they got it, they all pack up and leave quick. You know, right? So, because, and they didn't even get all. You know, they just had to take what they get and go. So,
maybe we should use that for the Chinese.
Daldara said that's what might happen.
Maybe positive.
You know, that is what might happen. You know. Right. So if we can come back on the 17th of March at 3 p.m., we'll send out something, and we could flesh out the implementation aspects of this, and then decide the next step. Who do we go to with this? Right, on the 17th. Okay. Thank you all very much. If you know, and
Okay.
hold your thoughts until the 17th of March. This has been very, very useful. You know, and I thank you all for participating.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.